Hi guys! So on my channel, I like to do little discussions on topics and pop culture, news, and I like to go in depth in ways that, I haven't seen other people talking about. So today I wanted to talk about Kanye West and some of the anti-Semitic comments he's made, and I wanted to discuss things through a psychology perspective relating to mental illness and just talking about like how much mental illness relates to something like those types of comments. And it's really important to distinguish, I don't have a formal opinion on this. I'm just discussing what I've heard other people talk about. I personally would never tell a Jewish person how to feel about someone else making anti-Semitic comments because I don't think that's my place, but I do think it's important to discuss certain aspects of what's been going on and to also take a look at things relating to mental illness. So something I thought was really interesting was a while back, I think it was Gabby Hanna, and I honestly don't know exactly what she said. I don't have education on it at all, but I know she had supposedly made like racist remarks in the past. And I found it interesting because, I saw different people who were psychologists talking about how, although she's saying things that are offensive and wrong, that in a way, like they see it when their patients are going through mania and like bipolar manic, like they're just saying a lot of delusional things that they never would if they were thinking clearly. And so I just kind of thought about, like what is the line for their professional opinion? Like in their professional opinion, what's the line between, going too far? Like, okay, this isn't mental illness, like this is just wrong. And I've seen people say different things actually, I've seen some people say that it doesn't justify it at all and that, this is just relating to him as a person. And, something I was thinking about is the thing with mania is although it can last like months or weeks, it can go a long time. Maybe, for example, like becoming super religious and talking about God a lot and, seeing that as like a huge life-changing thing for him, even if he had it happen during a manic episode, it's a belief he's formed now that remains outside of those manic episodes. So, I would be curious what a medical professional would say about that. Because it's interesting. Like, I mean, there's obviously a line, you can't cross and then say, oh, well, it was mental illness. And, I do hear a lot of people say, well, it's his choice, like he's not taking medicine and yada, yada, yada. But, something I do consider is that even with studying psychology and talking with different psychiatrists, at least the last time I was told, which was a few years ago, so it might be different, or he may have been speaking from his own experience, but he told me that 50% of bipolar people will not take their medicine. So I thought that was really interesting. So, although one bipolar person could say, well, I take my medicine, this is no excuse, yeah, it's a bit difficult because you never know, like, the symptoms someone has taking medicine, or as well, like, if they have stronger delusions, it may make getting medicated even harder than it should be. I know for schizophrenia, for example, that can be really hard because of the paranoia that patients have, and it's obviously different for everybody. So I don't think it justifies it at all, but just looking into the different aspects of it, I think it's honestly really good to have a discussion about like mental health awareness, instead of just saying, like he's crazy, yada yada. I think that these types of incidents could really be utilized to like educate people, for psychiatrists, psychologists, to talk about, well, this is happening, this is too far, like it's going too far, but maybe this relates to this symptom. How can we help our loved ones who have this issue? Or why is it worse in this case than a different case? I think it's really important to have like open conversations. And so, I saw another therapist discussing that, like saying, that there's a lot to talk about and that they found the reaction to him like very upsetting. And I don't know what to think of that perspective. I've also seen some therapists say the opposite, this isn't an excuse at all. So I just found it interesting hearing like the different opinions from people in psychology. Of course, that doesn't mean that they know everything just because they went to school for it. There's always going to be people that say different things, or that maybe they're just not that good of a doctor in general, so their opinion's a bit more flawed. But I just thought it was interesting to think about, and I just wish that I feel like it's a bit hard because for people with mental illness, it gives a bad stigma. I mean, I think Pete Davidson talks about that a lot, that he is mentally ill, but he takes his medicine and he really works on himself a lot. And that doesn't get talked about half as much as when somebody has a mental illness and they're going off, the deep end and they're having an episode, whatever. That's all that's getting talked about and publicized. And, it can be hard because it gives people with mental illnesses, it's already hard enough getting diagnosed. I mean, even the doctors who do diagnose, the psychiatrists, I've had trouble getting diagnosed for things that I do have because the doctors had their own stigma, so I had to go talk with another doctor and another doctor until I found one who, was like, oh, okay, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. We'll do this test, and like was at least open about it. So there's a whole lot that goes into it, but I think that overall it's really disappointing, and I hope that he's able to get the help that he needs. I saw Dave Chappelle's monologue and I was a bit confused by some of the things he said, because in the beginning he was saying like offensive stuff. I didn't really understand it. But later on, he goes on to talk about how, in his experience, he's worked with a lot of Jewish people in Hollywood. And he was saying that he could see why, if Kanye West is mentally unwell and if he's paranoid, that he may make a correlation, to that stereotype. But I mean, at the same time, I wish, if he came down from mania or whatever, he could say, I didn't mean that, kind of educate himself. But then at the same time, it's also hard because what's said is said. And then a bunch of people will see those types of comments and then act on it. They could say one thing about a group of people and then, I think with the coronavirus, for example, I think attacks on Asian people went up a ton. And so it's just really hard because at the same time, even if people have, mental illnesses that make their brain function differently and they're not fully understanding, what they're saying, it's still hard because the consequences are the same for those minority groups or those people who now experience discrimination and all sorts of issues as a result. So there's definitely a lot that goes into it. Overall, like the most important thing that we can take from this is, thinking about our loved ones who do have these types of mental issues, not forming any harsh opinions, like thinking, oh, if you have bipolar, you're automatically crazy and you're gonna, you're delusional or yada yada. Every mental illness case is so different and complex and specific to each person, and, not form a negative view of someone suffering from bipolar and assuming that that's how it looks in everyone who has it. It completely varies per person. So I would be interested to hear some actual therapists, psychiatrists' opinion, or maybe people who suffer from bipolar or BPD or honestly any mental illness in general, like how you felt about it, what do you do to help your symptoms subside? If there's any, Jewish people watching, their opinions, if it had any negative effect on them, I just like my comments to be like an open forum for discussion and hopefully to help people learn perspectives of other people and to be respected.